Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live chat. Okay, my name is Thomas T.J. Jackson, and I'm one of the moderators along with my colleague,
Alexi. Hey, Alexi Owen from Treebuddy, moderating together with TJ.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll introduce Pekka.
Hi, Pekka from Treebuddy, CEO.
Hi, my name is Maris Prii. I represent here Estonian investment agency. How long should I do the intro?
Well, we've reserved 3 minutes for each one. Yeah.
Would you like to continue, Pekka, like with your? Please say a little bit.
All right, so about Treebuddy, short words. So Treebuddy is kind of a radical tree planting and caring service for the planet. It's trying to make everything as transparent as possible and verifiable. That's just what is needed for reforestation challenge of the world. And we also believe that this kind of whole idea of purpose-drivenship has to be taken in a very deep sense to make really impactful entrepreneurships. Thanks.
Okay. So second try, my name is Maris Prii. I represent the Estonian investment agency. I'm based in San Francisco, actually, normally in California. My goal there is to be the spokesperson of Estonia's digital society, our business environment, to be kind of the connector of the VC world there with the Estonian startup scene, and to basically attract foreign direct investments to Estonia. And in my previous life, I've been for many years very hands-on involved with the operations and early stage investments. Was part of Startup Wise Guys Accelerator program for many, many years with the corporate governance responsibilities there, etc. Also was part of Latitude 59 conference organizing team for many, many years. Responsible for investor relations, and that's kind of the same line of work that I do now in the US as well.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for tuning in, and especially thank you for everyone that walked up those 5 flights of stairs to join us.
6.5 flights.
And a couple people even wore high heels up those stairs, which is even more amazing. But thank you very much. I realize that time is one of your most sacred resources, and I appreciate you spending it with us. My name is Distenfield, and I am the co-founder of GSD Venture Studios. We have a thesis that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but sometimes opportunity is not. Or a less altruistic way of saying that is there's nothing magic in the water in San Francisco. Although I've lived in the Bay Area for many years, there's nothing magic there that makes companies there better than anywhere else. And so my firm travels to the far corners of the world looking for bold, resilient entrepreneurs like the ones in this room and the ones turning in. And I just can't be more excited to be here today. Especially when you're talking about one of my love languages, which is purpose-driven companies. We need organizations that are going to leave a legacy, not just get us more connections or dates like Tinder does famously. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think this question, who I am at the moment, is very important. I am in the process of reinventing myself. And here in this poster you see the Digital Freedom Festival. This is something I was organizing for 6 years just before COVID, similar festival like Latitude, but only in Latvia. So from this point, COVID was a great excuse for some things and some projects to say stop. And why not? And I also used these last 2 years to think who I am. And one answer I got was that I really want to be a useful person to the world, and create useful projects and companies which can really add value. So when I ask people, what are you doing? And then I ask the question, so what? So I'm really keen in the answers that in the end, these people, they say that they make a world a better place. So this is a journey I'm in at the moment. I'm working on different projects. One of them is reinventing my own already existing reputation management company, and actually I'm transforming it to impact communications company, to help companies to tell the story of impact. But the other things is Arete, which is a project I started during COVID. It's well-being, coaching and mentoring, actually, how to live a happy life. But why I'm here in Latitude is also with the project Novator. It's about women empowerment. So we believe that more women in power positions, wealthier women, probably can contribute much more than until now.
Great. I'm Rasmus. I'm the innovation lead in Sunly. We're a renewable energy startup that's growing really, really rapidly. So we're about to raise, 150 million, and we've been there for 4 years, so rocket ship. But what I do is I take 10% of that capital and invest it in other startups in the electrification field. So that means that we look at renewables, we look at smart city, IoT, e-mobility, everything quite hard. So not like, so we don't do Tinder, direct, so good for that. So we do more like, I don't know, material science that goes into batteries. So that's what I am at. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Alexei, please start.
Hey, I know that I was supposed to ask Pekka now what is purpose-driven, but I'll start with the other kind of definition problem, which is in the title of our conversation. So what is sustainable innovation and why we are discussing it today?
Well, sustainability leads or has a lot to do with this purpose-drivenship also. Maybe I will first explain about that. And
okay, yes.
Because I really would like that we have as strong definition to that as possible in the deeper sense, because there are many purposes with people. Some of them can be quite mundane, but really, if we want to define it in a way that goes beyond ego purposes, okay? Something that what Dagnija was already saying, that okay, you want to do something which is useful for the planet. That's a very good starting point, right away from the beginning, that you have kind of willingness to do something good for other sentient beings, etc. So, and funnily, when you start to have this motivation right from the beginning, then some things happen which makes you more happier as a person. What you were saying about legacy, it was perfectly good, because then when your deathbed comes, you can be quite in a peaceful mindset, hopefully.
Great. So let's have, both Maris and Derek have the experience from North America. So how does it kind of sound from the perspective of how these same things, purpose-driven sustainable innovation, are being kind of discussed in North America? Was this something that is kind of all resonating there or getting traction? That's
a very interesting question. I was just thinking, before coming here, how do I define it for myself? And, I was sure that this question is coming, what is the purpose-driven, or what is the purpose? And thinking, ironically, being representing the government here, the only one, I guess, is the joke that, I'm from a government, I'm here to help. It's, but I do feel that, I'm fulfilling a certain purpose here, because I do, being involved with the startup ecosystem so long in Estonia, it's I really want to make the difference. And for me, the purpose-driven is also about passion. But coming back to the Silicon Valley question side, I do feel that it's a lot more talk there, actually, among friends as well. It's what do you want to do, or what do you want to achieve? I never had this kind of discussions around the passion or the purpose in Estonia in this way. And I think in there, it's more rooted to kind of to the mentality and the culture. so that even with the friends, like, you know, you can have the discussion of, you know, where do you find your purpose and how do you fulfill it, and, you know, what do you want to achieve. So I think it's more thought through there. It doesn't mean that people here in Estonia or Latvia or this region, they don't think about it, but it's not part of our culture to talk maybe about it so openly. So that's, for me, was an interesting, like, aha moment that, oh, like, why not? Like, you can have this discussion with your friends, not only about your company, but that's actually a wider thing. Do you want to add up something?
Okay, Dirk, you always say that, thank you very much, Maris. Dirk, you always say that Silicon Valley is a way of life. Could you go deeper?
Well, I think there's a couple interesting points. I absolutely believe that Silicon Valley isn't a geographic location. It is a mindset where technology companies take the position that they're not scared to fail. And they start from a blank sheet of paper and say, what if I had unlimited amount of capital, unlimited amount of global potential? What is the impact we could make? And I think, kind of segueing into the last question and great comments, is purpose-driven innovation is this thesis that you have as an organization where you're going to deviate a little bit from the last 100 years of economic principles. So in the United States, we had a famous economist, Milton Friedman. And Milton Friedman famously has said that the number one responsibility of a corporation is to return money to the shareholders. And that is the ethical thing for a corporation to do. But since the middle 1990s and certainly today, there's this acknowledgement that you have other stakeholders besides just profit. And so I think if certainly profit is one stakeholder, or if you're a nonprofit, a recurring revenue model is important. But this acknowledgement that there's this other stakeholder, which is you need to have a purpose where you're making the world a better place. And I think that mission is what invigorates the public, your employees, your customers, and potentially the entire world.
That's really fascinating. I mean, what you are saying, I would translate, is that in the country of liberty and freedom, people are interested in what is the purpose of their life, and in the geographical location, which is also a mindset, which is known for its kind of unlimited imagination. People are searching for, purpose in, through unlimited imagination at the moment, and that's driving something new. And of course, now we would like to hear comments from Rasmus and Dagnija on that.
Yeah, so this is actually really interesting, and I think it's not to say that Estonia doesn't have purpose behind what they do, because otherwise you would not start a company. Like, the talented people that start companies can get really high-paying jobs doing something else, with much less stress and much less risk of a heart stroke. But the point is that what we're seeing now, so obviously I don't only invest in Estonia, it's Nordics and Baltics and Poland as well, is that the purpose is becoming more important. But it's becoming more important because of the Maslow pyramid of needs, right? If you don't have anything to eat, you don't really care about anything else. Silicon Valley, in that sense, it is a mindset, and it's a mindset of abundance. Is that you know that if you work there and if you've stayed there for a while, you probably came from big tech. So that means you don't need to think about how can I put like food on the table. For example, if someone was starting a company in Georgia, it's very different. So your ambitions also change regarding how much risk you can take for how long. But in that sense, like Derek and Maris are completely true. Your employees are never going to work for you because you make a lot of money as a founder. It's because they align with your vision of a better tomorrow, right?
Okay, Rasmus, one more follow-up. How come in Estonia you guys have churned out, 21 unicorns in the last year and a half, 2 years, and you had the corona in between?
I
Please,
think it's still single digits, but hey, that would be great.
Maris, please tell.
I think it's 10 or 11 only from Estonia, so it's like it's not as great. But I guess it is like, okay, there is a joke why Estonians are such a good entrepreneurs, especially doing startups, because the climate most of the year is so bad and so dark, there's nothing else to do than work at home and, come up with the great solutions. But the joke aside, I think there is a lot of purpose, or like, I think companies coming from this region, they do have a purpose. At the same time, they have a very strong grounding. They have 2 foot on the ground, and they understand that building a business means that there has to be a cash coming in. So there has to be a real life problem that you're solving. And while doing that, of course, that it would be wonderful if you have a higher purpose behind it. That not necessarily to make a world like a much better place, but at least not make it the worst place. Or like your success shouldn't come on the cost of the others next to you, right? And in like my mind started to wonder on the bigger picture as well. I think in this region the connection with, for example, with the nature that we have, like this population density is way different in Estonia in these countries as in the US, especially in California. So we have a different relationship with the nature anyways. The clean up world initiatives to make sure that everything, you don't put the trash on the ground, which is a shocking sight to see in some other parts of the world still. So this is, baseline for us already. So this is, what we think that, you don't create damage around you. And I think talking about purpose, it means different things in different parts of the world, obviously. But I think in Estonia, even though, yes, we don't talk about it that much, but it's around us so that we take it in already for granted, kind of. So that's, I think, also it puts Estonian companies in a better position in the world, that they have something to say.
And please, Latvia and Lithuania, they are coming up. They are right behind Estonia. And what's the reason for that? Please tell us.
Yes, I think that actually I really like to brand our region as a Baltic region. So we are very successful and
Is it teamwork? Is it teamwork?
I think it's a teamwork because we cooperate in talent, for example, and sharing value system, etc., etc. And I think there are very great initiatives when all the Baltic countries have come together. And so I think it's made in Baltics. It's something what I'm really fond of. But turning back to this question, what about the purpose? For me, one question that bothers is there the business case in purpose-driven business? And I feel that there is a shift of discussions that there is. But I think it's only possible when there's this right mindset, and the second, very important, that you look in long term. So it's about the patience, and the third, I think it's very much about the definition of KPIs of our success. And I think for me, very important question at the moment is how we define success. In macro terms, for example, we already challenged the topic about GDP. If it's the right metrics for the country's performance. I like the idea of about happiness index, or at the moment a very popular approach is well-being economy approach. So I think that also companies are moving towards these, expanding these metrics.
Awesome. If I can interrupt you, Dirk, jump in, please. This is a fireside chat, so jump in and say something. And then Pekka, please, Dirk. Thank you.
I mean, I 100% agree that you can't have a purpose-driven organization without a recurring revenue model. And that's certainly true in a technology startup, which also needs to generate huge returns. I mean, the thing that I would say, and I looked at Pekka, is it really does start at the top. I mean, Treebuddy is absolutely going to be a unicorn. And it starts with his belief and his passion and him being able to motivate and provide that motivation, direction, and purpose for his team to go towards a common goal. So yes, I think there's great government initiatives and cooperations, but you also should pat yourselves on the back as founders for, you know, having the chutzpah to motivate these, you know, these huge opportunities.
Thanks for these words. I must say that our team is really super, and they certainly would have done things without, you know, this. It's one thing, role of ego in all this. I think it's a very central idea in whole the concept. When you're doing something like a very very purpose-driven innovation, then it's also a question of inner journey. What can you do there? It's actually the more important journey in the path. When you do things there right, then actually you might have some effect to the others, and some crazy surprises might happen. And this is just like that. Yeah. One thing, what Dagnija was saying, pointed regarding the purpose or sustainability field. It's a very curious thing. We had been selected as one of the top 50 most sustainable companies in the Nordics, and then as a result we were in Copenhagen, and there was all these companies assessed by their number one most important sustainability development contribution. And what was very, very peculiar to me, that in these 50 companies there was only 3 which were dealing with environment. Think about, there's nothing, most of them were in health sector, which is of course nothing bad, but it makes one to think if this concept of sustainability in the entrepreneurship is just taking, you know, easy fruits and then turning them to the sustainability kind of scheme.
Excellent, excellent. Rasmus, please.
I mean, first of all, health tech and medtech is not easy fruits, but sure. No, I mean, so sustainability, it's a sustainable or purpose-driven sustainable innovation. I mean, I don't think it has to be environment. I mean, obviously, I work in the field that's all environment, so I'm very happy when it is. But I mean, in order to have the biggest impact, you need to start from the biggest problems, right? So while holding nature the way it is amazing, but making nature work for you in a way where you don't damage nature, I mean, that's obviously even bigger, right? So I think it leaves a lot of leeway of like what is sustainable in that sense. It doesn't have to be environment only. I mean, I work in electrification, right? Renewables. In an essence, obviously, we build stuff. I mean, all of my startups build stuff. All of them consume energy, but they change out the, you know, underlying figments and segments that we now use to like fuel our life.
Awesome, awesome. Dagnija, please. What would you say about this? Do you agree with these gentlemen?
I agree that medtech is a very difficult field. And
honest, excellent.
And I think one of the reasons is because it's long-term investments, there are a lot of regulations, etc., etc. But I think there are a lot of innovations we can still find in sustainability field. And one experiment you can just take, for example, United Nations goals, and just check, you know, which is maybe where the most suitable for you, where there's a passion of yours, and where you can also feel that there's a business case. Because I really believe that there should be and there could be business case. And today in Latitude there was one discussion when the speaker raised a very great, it was not even hypothesis, it was axiom in his case, that he said that if the companies are similar in all of the variables, the one which would define the more success would be this purpose idea, because it attracts more talent, it attracts more investment, it's the lower barriers for publicity, etc., etc. So this could be this variable what can make a better success. Yeah.
Awesome. Maris, please. And then Derek, please. Follow up. This is awesome. Hey, a round of applause, please. We have the dream team here. And we'll take audience questions, 3 questions, and then during the networking part, you can chat with them. But we all limited this to 3 questions. But please.
Okay, thanks. Something that you mentioned that I do believe and think that as long as there is no common ground on terminology, then certain catchphrases or catchwords are overused, or they tend to be overused. As I think sustainability might be moving to that category, that there are a lot of companies using the word without understanding, what is behind it and, what does it actually mean, and then kind of, trying to brand themselves in a more positive way. And that is definitely not a good, path to go, because that kind of takes away the focus on what it really means. At the same time, like taking now the role of being the government here. And as a side note, this is the first time ever in my life that I'm working for the government. Like previous life, it was all in the private sector. But just like throwing out the idea of the sustainability concept, should, and to what extent is it coming from the private sector? And it's like, obviously, it's great if there are founders of the companies that are thinking of wider environment around them and don't want to harm it. But at the same time, this is also a responsibility of the government to make sure that, if the company founders and the shareholders, they have their own personal interest, like the financial interest in the game. So the government is the one enforcing the regulations to make sure that everybody else are kind of protected from overuse, that, the
awesome.
carbon footprint management and et cetera, et cetera. So...
Okay, Derek, is Big Brother watching you? Because is there too much government? When we are thinking about purpose-driven sustainability, I agree with Maris, and I agree also with Pekka said, and Rasmus and Dagnija said that if we are thinking there should be government cooperating, but is it the startup? Is it also the established company? Is it their job to motivate the people to understand they have a cause when they are working, and they're just not punching a time clock?
I think there's a couple narratives around government and sustainable innovation. I think there is this, kind of belief that oftentimes government is roadblocks, and certainly you could make that argument around the world and in the US with crypto, how the government hasn't been helpful. But then you could look at a company like Tesla, which has been largely aided by government subsidies in the US. So I don't think that it's a black or white issue. I think it is up to the founders and up to the organizations to find ways to work with a very, very important stakeholder, which is government. And you have to find a way to work with them and not just blow through them and say, well, we don't care. I don't think that that's appropriate or sustainable, no pun intended. I think one of the big shifts is that we don't live in a world where companies can exist without a voice. So when I grew up, General Electric was the big company in the United States. And GE, the only thing you ever heard from them was their earnings reports. And that doesn't exist anymore. We live in a world where your customers expect you to have an opinion. And they don't even necessarily have to believe in your opinion. But you should have an opinion. And that's where I think, sustainable companies have a competitive advantage, because they are planting a flag in the ground. They know that not everyone's going to agree, but they're going to say, this is who we are. This is who we're going to support. And that's what gets respected by customers. And that's just so important, because that's what makes sustainable innovation sustainable, because it's actually what customers want. They want those real, authentic relationships, which is why we all drink craft beer and not, Budweiser or, whatever the big brand is here.
Hey, thank you for putting us in the kind of historical context of what companies are and what they were. And understanding that the expectations are different. Maris, and then we promised some questions from the audience.
Just wanted to comment, like of course I agree with you in like a broader extent, but at the same time I'm seeing that was brought out before I think one of you was mentioning that the purpose-driven consumer behavior can exist when there is a certain baseline covered with financial income. And sadly, seeing what is happening in the world at the moment, and now being like shortly back in Estonia and watching Estonian news, is like the sad reality is that even if we know Estonia, for example, Estonian vegetables are grown without pesticides, like, you know, more organic, the people in the shop are still making their decisions based on the price tag. And, you know, they, like most of the common people cannot afford to be super, you know, purpose-driven in those situations. And that's where I think when the government kind of hand should come into place and force like all the companies to be more organic or like reducing the footprint, and, you know, so that all of them would actually have the cost variable calculated in the price and makes it like the play field more fair.
Very well put,
And,
Rasmus. Dagnija.
yes,
Rasmus.
and I think I'm optimistic, and I really believe in cooperation and their roles we each play in society. Some 10 years ago, when I established my first company, I was a great believer in market economy and the invisible hand of the market. So I thought that that government should not do it. Let's say they should not intervene in anything, but as there are more, let's say, but the world is burning, and in these situations you really see that the only cooperation, it's what makes a difference. And one case, it's pandemic. I think it was a great example, not only on local level but also internationally, globally. Actually, we really behaved as a global village to the extreme extent. But also right now in Ukrainian war case, we see that actually in such a short term, the society, the global society can mobilize. Of course, there are a lot of things still to be done, but at least now region and its effort of communities, entrepreneurs, government, international organizations. So this makes me believe that and be optimistic. On the other hand, sometimes I'm thinking, shall we really wait to this momentum when the fire is already in the house? So from this perspective, all this discussion about the purpose is also about these preventive actions where all together we can participate.
Rasmus and Pekka.
Yeah, so, I mean, government has to set a baseline, but the problem with government setting a baseline is that you need to have first pushers. I mean, Tesla is a really good example. I mean, in Norway, Tesla is the most sold car now in new cars. I mean, that's because it's 25% cheaper than ICE, right? And I mean, renewables today, solar is by far the cheapest there is. I mean, it wasn't always this way. It was essentially brute force invested into in order to get the economics down. So I guess you need a few really crazy investors or founders to skip the push, and then the consumers will follow, and then the government will make the rest of the people follow. So in that sense, government has a massive thing, because if it never comes in, I mean, then it just dies, right? Like then that's where the sustainability angle on a thing can totally die, because it, for example, remains much more expensive. But when government says that this is the way to do it, it flips the script.
Awesome. Pekka, follow up, please. And then Derek.
Yep.
And then we'll take audience questions.
What
after Derek.
Dagnija was saying about pandemics and its kind of effect to a global village was really great. And it, climate change is another thing which is really increasing our understanding that we're all here in the same boat. And when we think about solutions, this, let's say, Silicon Valley mindset is something which is very much needed in pretty many places. And of course, Nordics have been pretty good in coming up to the mark quite much. I guess nowadays it's, according to the most recent data, that the startup intensity is the highest in Estonia. Finland was in the second position. US was number 5, but of course the massive amount of capital there is, it's just mind-blowing. Derek, please.
Governments are going to have a role, and I think you, as a founder, have to navigate that. And sometimes you have to do what the scooter companies did, which is just set their scooters out and apologize. Sometimes you have to do what Coinbase has done and really kind of fall in line with U.S. government regulations. But I think it's about segmenting your stakeholders. So you have like your profit stakeholders, you have your customer stakeholders, you have your sustainability stakeholders, you have your government, and they all kind of intertwine, but you also have to look at them separately. And that's what I was saying earlier. We used to just only say profit was the only thing that should be on the CEO's agenda. And I think if you realize that you now have several competing stakeholders and they're all equally as valuable and you need to think about them, and it's almost like a different pitch deck for each one or a different presentation. And as long as you're realizing that, I think you can be successful.
Anyone from the audience? Questions?
Okay. This discussion actually ended up with government versus free market. Actually, it's more questions to the US because US is the leader and defines rules. Based on this Elon Musk, lots of noise was coming out. It seems that he's actually, as he told, actually the biggest company in US is a government, and he's kind of trying to probably not fight but change something. So the question is that, is it something changing in US? Is it something old systems doesn't work anymore? What's going on in the US? It's something is changing, but it's not so easily. Elon has a kind of one-man fight against. Is it this to US or yeah?
You wanna?
So I don't know if that I don't know if I totally understood the question, but I think the great digital transformation that is happening around the world, partly because of the pandemic, certainly here in Estonia with blockchain and cryptocurrencies, has really democratized a lot of the things that was quite frankly monopolized for a long time in the US. And especially in things like blockchain, for example, it's really one of the first segments that I know of in my lifetime where the United States didn't start with this inherent competitive advantage. And, that's an amazing thing, I think, because now you have people from all around the world contributing to this, earth-changing technology. And so it's not just blockchain and crypto, it's everything. So you're going to see rising competition against the US, and I think that is phenomenal, because I think everybody up here and most of the folks in this room want the best ideas and the best companies to come forward regardless of where it came from or not.
Maris.
So to answer to your question would mean that we should go into like more in depth with the politics in the US, and I think that's very slippery slope to go. So it could end up hours of argumentation. I'm not sure. Things are changing for sure. I think in every country things are changing, but I think I would rather take a different angle for the question, and put it out there just a discussion as well. Like, are there some keywords and some topics actually arising from certain regions, either it's Silicon Valley or maybe from Estonia or other countries, arising from those regions because there is the problem or the pain is bigger there? like when you're talking about sustainability, because it's like so overpopulated, or like there's like massive population in Asia or in the US as well in certain regions, and not in Estonia. So maybe that's why it's not the big thing here yet. At the same time, like the different example, maybe talking about regulating the crypto activities is more in the topic of Estonia, because many years ago Estonia was the first one in the world to open it up and formally like giving the licenses, and then now learning from the mistakes and understanding there has to be more regulations in place to protect the ones who are more ethical and want to do good from those who are like the bad apples and kind of ruining the reputation. So it goes also for the purpose sustainability, different topics, but yeah, I think different parts of the world have, I think, different ideas in the mind, or like what comes more in the mind when talking about sustainability.
Thank you for putting us in the context. I think we are about to... Yes, go ahead.
I think Maris mentioned the regulatory environment to some extent, so I have a question to all of you. Like, how do you think about the regulatory environment in sustainable innovations in general? Like, is it restricting the growth in sustainable innovation, or does it give any opportunity to startups? Because if we're looking at what's happening in the European Union, we have like emerging regulations like EU taxonomy, which basically is saying which economic activity is contributing to the sustainable activities. So how do you guys think about the regulatory environment in that space?
Excellent, excellent. Please, Dagnija. Then Rasmus.
It's a good question, because on one hand, there again, free market ideas that nothing should be regulated, and the market itself defines through the customer's demand, what's valuable, etc., etc. But as we see, the market's not always, let's say, with good intentions and clever enough. So. But I think that the regulations, if they're with the right intentions, mindset, and expertise, etc., they could be great incentives. That, let's say, they can help to foster changes, and in a way becoming a trigger to. Yeah, for innovations, definitely. For example, let's take one example. In my case, diversity topics. Also because of the fact that there are more legislations coming, and it also drives market demand for that. And in between innovations, so I think there's some.
Rasmus.
Yes, so I mean, all change creates opportunity and problems, right? So, I mean, startups thrive in the not illegal part, right? You start doing something that's not illegal, but it's not what everyone else does for whatever reason. So when you have regulation that's set up in the future that this is where we're going to go to, that obviously creates a massive opportunity for a startup. It's already bigger if they start dealing with it before the regulation says, and then they just hit the right wave, right? So yeah, it creates opportunities, but it also creates problems for startups, because if bigger companies start doing it, they're more capitalized, and if it's really their focus, they will have more money to get it done faster. Usually that's not the case, but in principle.
Awesome. Pekka, please, jump in. And then Dirk, and then Maris.
Regarding regulation, I'm a big believer in EU in this context. It has been doing so many, good things. Most of our national regulation in EU is coming from EU. And one thing regarding the national innovation environments, I would love to see the day where there would be more, in practical sense, understanding in national financiers to SMEs or startups, which would be really dealing smartly with metrics regarding sustainability. I mean, because often it's just easy metrics like economical metrics that are driving the decision making on whether companies are going to receive some governmental funding or not. It's not so easy to take these kind of metrics into account, but this is the thing that I hope to see one day.
The one thing that I see that the EU does much better than the United States is governments do a better job at providing a blueprint. What governments should not do is regulate by enforcement. And that's really what the SEC has done to, US crypto companies. I think crypto companies in the United States have been begging for tell us the rules, give us a law. And what unfortunately our government has largely done is been radio silent and just commenced enforcement actions.
But could it be, Derek, that the government, they really don't understand? They don't have the experts in place. Please, Derek and Maris.
I mean, certainly that's the truth, but they need to figure it out. I think there's 11 sectors right now that they break up the U.S. economy into, and I think blockchain and crypto will be the 12th and probably already is. And so this is something that needs to be led from the government with a blueprint, not just enforcements and saying you're breaking the law.
Awesome. Maris, please.
I totally agree. The regulations are necessary, but I'm thinking like how the evolution of creating the government regulations normally goes is that there is a new innovation emerging, new technology emerging. Government is like freaked out, first of all doesn't know what to do. Then things like I need to regulate it. They don't understand it yet, and maybe some governments never will understand, so they over-regulate it. And then there is like a shift towards the middle ground of understanding that if you are so restrictive, then the whole new wave of technology, is it crypto, blockchain, Web3 at the moment, if you're so restrictive, your country is going to be left out, and all the innovation and technology and the companies and the wealth that they actually create and the jobs, the employment, everything, it's going to those countries which are more like open to innovation. So I think all the new waves are a good exercise for so many governments in the world to put them into the to the cycle, because the governments, the countries are competing with each other. Which
Awesome.
country has the best regulations in place, and with every new innovation emerging like that, I think that the competition is getting more selective, or filtering even more out which are the countries who are lagging behind, and not necessarily the third world countries that we think of. There are many Western countries also in Europe that with some regulations they are not keeping up the pace of the new innovation.
Thank you. Okay, starting with Rasmus, we'll start to wrap up. Rasmus, excuse me. Give us 3 minutes. What do you like about our Fireside chat? Give us your overall viewpoint of how does this connect not only government, startups, Baltics and USA and everything, and the whole global environment, this type of fireside chat when we have an expert panel. Tell us, what is your take from this? How could we develop this in the future? And then we go around 3 minutes. Tell us. Thank you.
The floor is yours.
We're all looking at you.
I have no clue what I'm just asked. Yeah, okay. So these kind of discussions where you have people from different walks of life doing different things from different regions, it adds a lot of different perspectives in your mindset when you're defining something or designing something. But one fire chat doesn't achieve that much, right? I mean, it can light a spark, but that's about it. I'm just being frank here. Not to say that this is not inherently useful, but this is not, we're going to change the world from a fire chat, right?
Follow up, please.
I think we can change the world, because everything starts. I think everything starts within, as Pekka already said. The beginning is inside, and if some of these ideas spark some energy, to make the world a better place even more, I think it's a big success already. And who knows, maybe after some years we would refer that this was the moment.
Awesome. Okay, Derek, the moment that you follow up, please.
But on serious note, my takeaway is definitely that the world that we are living in a very the high complexity world, and it demands complex solutions with the complex stakeholders' involvement. And what Derek already mentioned, that we live in this very interconnected stakeholders world, and we should take all of the interests into account. And it's becoming even more complex. But as I said, I'm optimistic.
Okay, Derek, you were on a plane for like 27 hours and you came here. Thank you for coming. Derek Distenfield, he came he came. So tell us.
She took the same plane I did. In fact, she came from San Francisco. I came from
So
from,
only 27 and 29
Florida.
hours.
Yeah,
31 hours. Okay, so please.
Look, GSD stands for get shit done. And that's certainly a mantra that we hold near and dear to our heart. And I 100% agree that you can get a little over-conference-y, and because this is not the opportunity to change the world sitting up here. But what I will say is you can't do what you can't see. You can't do what you can't see. The fact is, Treebuddy has planted thousands and thousands of plants millions of trees around the world, and they've come up with an innovative business model so corporations can pay for it. Plus, they wrapped a community around it where they get locals to care for these trees. And people need to know about that so they can come up with their own innovative ideas, wrapping communities around things, getting corporations to pay for it, providing them value so they could show them where those trees are so they could tell their stories. So certainly you're not going to get stuff done sitting up here, but you can get stuff done evangelizing, telling your stories so other people see it and get inspired as well. And I'm absolutely inspired by Treebuddy and many of the other projects that are happening right here in the Baltics.
Thank you. Maris.
I think my 5 cents that I hope somebody would take away from the conversation would be actually that it all starts from your own decisions. Like, you take the ownership of your life and the outcome of what you do. It's the small actions of, defining the purpose for yourself. And the next step, defining the purpose for the job that you do, the company that you work for. Is it aligned with your own purpose? And sustainability the same way. It's like with all your, whatever your possibilities are there, like the small steps that you can take knowingly every day, thinking about it and taking this as a base level for all the other decisions that you make. That makes a big impact, and that is the starting point for changing the world and having the tent in the world for a better place.
Thank you. Pekka, you chose this group, and all of you guys are professional. I mean, why? Tell us, what does everyone bring to the table? Because this is the most awesome group I've been around in a long time.
You're way too...
Yeah. Yes, you can quote me on that. Okay.
2 years of COVID, and this is
We covered in short time pretty many topics. One thing what Derek was saying, actually I asked Mika Vanhanen to come here now. Actually, he's the man who was starting 15 years ago to plant trees in his NGO, and he has been planting 30 million trees via this whole network. Okay, and and then we made a realization that tree planting is not enough. The trees has to be taken care of in a smart way, digital way, and in a way that is very verifiable and transparent. So.
Well, plus you have to build a multi-billion-dollar business so it sustains for years to come. So it's
money
not
is just resource, of course, to do it.
It's his great-great-grandchildren that still see the company.
One thing, what you were saying, Derek, about that, I mean, the enthusiasm, I guess it's the Silicon Valley mindset, what you were saying about your full commitment on the things. And like, I'm impressed that like you were saying that you're 24/7 available in WhatsApp and test me out. And okay, I will do one day when I know that it's 4 a.m. in your time zone, for sure. Yeah, but so, I mean, this kind of obsession of doing something for good, to others, to help others, like Rasmus was doing.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes,
And I
I
want to
really
follow
love
up.
that kind of mindset.
Yes, and I want to follow up about Mika. Please take the microphone. I want to follow up because this is a good word, obsession. So tell us, Mika, when you are working with different diverse cultures, and how do you get, as Dirk said, it's not only the governments, it's the community, it's the empowerment. So give us an example when you've been in the Philippines, for example.
Well, actually, I graduated as a classroom teacher, and I started this 20 years ago, and it was a purpose-driven project. really, because it was about sustainable development, how people can, and schools and communities can do something together. And for instance, in the Philippines, we have those planters in 157 countries, so it's a big network. But we missed the incentives for local people, and now with Treebuddy we have this economic incentive system, and they can take care of the trees, not just to plant trees, because tree care is very important. I'm very happy to be now, after teaching and being in NGO, to jump to business.
All right, give him a round of applause. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to wrap this up after a few seconds. Let's say 2-3 minutes. I said 2-3 minutes 3 times, by the way. So I would like, in closing, Pekka, Maris, Derek, Dagnija, and Rasmus, please. And then I would like, where's my please come here, and you're closing also. Alex is here, he's hiding. All right, okay, let's start with Alexi and then Pekka.
I think we've ended up in kind of very good definitions, which are, of course, open-ended, like they always are in the world like we are living in. But I think it is kind of really showing the way forward in kind of really building the future society is based on purpose-driven kind of approach, both in both public organizations, but also primarily in private enterprises. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it sets a huge challenge for companies, and since we know that this is the way how, I mean, they are primarily making the world going around, and this big challenge needs to be done by them. Pretty much, of course, you need governmental, regulations, etc. a lot, but more and more we are understanding the importance of this part. Government is playing.
Well, I sincerely believe the world is changing, like whether some people want it or not. Many years ago, like people didn't want to bring, the global warming even into the serious conversations, and now everybody are talking about it. So in the end, it comes down, to the choices that we make, to be a smart consumer, to pay attention, like how things are done. Is it ethical? Like how they are taking care of the environment? Is it and also to be a smart voter, because that's how you give a strong signal to the government what is actually in the interest of the people. That's it.
If you're trying to tackle a big problem and you haven't been called crazy once or twice, there's probably something wrong with you. And I just want to say that I'm very humbled and always impressed by folks that continue to move forward despite doubts and obstacles and fears and all those things. It's one of those things that's easy to say but hard to do. And I think if you're passionate about solving a problem and it burns you so much, those are usually the companies that wind up succeeded and the problems that wind up getting solved. So stay after it.
I would like to wish all good luck to Treebuddy project, and also I think it's very important, and you are already a good success, but you are also a great role model, and I believe it will be a great role model for other startup companies, for other founders who feel there's passion, for other investors, also to see that there is this, let's say, business case, and you can earn also money by doing good, and also that you would inspire from the first day to think about the scale of the planet, which in this interconnected world is where we are. So it is our village.
In other words, my favorite motto, more human than human. Rasmus, please.
I mean, the world is changing towards a sustainable way, right? It's up to us as consumers to make it quicker. So you can make changes on a daily basis that make it so that the world becomes more sustainable already tomorrow, not in 2050. Thanks.
Thank you. This has been an exciting conversation.